From victim blaming during the Ray Rice scandal,
you can do your part to do whatever you can do to try to make sure it doesn't happen,
to doubting Myles Garrett's claims of racial abuse.
And if somebody used that N-word on us, I don't need a week to tell the NFL office about that.
Stephen A. Smith has been caught in racist and racially charged moments that sparked outrage across sports media, with some fans even accusing him of being racist toward his own people. In this video, we break down his most controversial clips, starting with one fan say he could have avoided Ray Rice. On July 25, 2014, the sports world was grappling with the aftermath of Baltimore Ravens running back Ray Rice being caught on video assaulting his fiancée, Janae Palmer, in an Atlantic City elevator. The NFL had handed down a paltry 2-game suspension that many felt was laughably inadequate, and everyone from fans to analysts to former players had an opinion on what should happen next. Stephen A. Smith decided to share his thoughts on First Take. However, he only made the situation worse.
We keep talking about the guys. We know you have no business putting your hands on a woman. But what I've tried to employ the female members of my family, some of who you all met and talked to and what have you, is that, again, and this is what I've done this all my life, let's make sure we don't do anything to provoke wrong actions.
Instead of keeping the focus on Ray Rice, Smith shifted the conversation toward what women should do to avoid provoking violence.
And I think that just talking about what guys shouldn't do, we got to also make sure that you can do your part to do whatever you can do to try to make sure it doesn't happen.
The reaction was instant. Fans accused Smith of pushing a racist black stereotype, the idea that black women are aggressive, responsible for their abuse, and partly to blame for the violence done to them. ESPN suspended him for an entire week, with the network releasing a statement saying his comments were not consistent with their values and standards. Smith later apologized on air, claiming his words came across differently than he had intended, and that he would never suggest victims bear responsibility for violence against them. Up next is a time when Stephen A. Smith went absolutely nuclear on national television. Colin Kaepernick. When Colin Kaepernick was trying to make his long-awaited return to the NFL in 2019, years after his peaceful protests against police brutality had made him one of the most polarizing figures in American sports, the league arranged a special workout in Atlanta designed to showcase his skills for interested teams. But when Kaepernick relocated the event from the Falcons facility to a high school over disputes about media access and liability waivers that he felt were unfair and restrictive, Stephen A. Smith went absolutely nuclear on national television. On First Take, Smith declared that Kaepernick wants to be a martyr and that moving the workout location eradicates his points altogether. He accused the former San Francisco 49ers quarterback of not truly wanting to play professional football anymore, essentially suggesting that Kaepernick was more interested in making political statements and maintaining his activist image than actually making an NFL roster and competing for a championship. The criticism came swiftly from all directions, and it cut particularly deep given Smith's position as one of the most prominent black voices in sports media. Former 49ers safety Eric Reid feuded with Smith on Twitter, calling his take disgraceful and disappointing from someone who should understand the stakes involved. But the most cutting response came from Hall of Famer Terrell Owens, who said that Smith's white co-host Max Kellerman actually seemed blacker than Smith in terms of genuinely supporting Kaepernick's cause and understanding the systemic issues at play. Smith fired back defensively, saying, "I'm a black man, you idiots," and defending his long history of advocating for black issues and speaking truth to power. But the damage was already done. Many in the black community felt betrayed by one of their most prominent and influential voices in sports media. This next entry was one of the ugliest and most disturbing incidents in NFL history. Myles Garrett, Cleveland Browns defensive end. Myles Garrett ripped off Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph's helmet during a brawl at the end of a Thursday night game and swung it viciously at his head. The NFL suspended Garrett indefinitely, ending his season and casting a shadow over his entire career. But then came the bombshell revelation that changed everything. Garrett claimed Rudolph had called him a racial slur during their altercation, and that was what provoked his violent response. Stephen A. Smith's response on First Take raised eyebrows across the sports world and sparked intense debate about how we handle racism allegations. Rather than taking Garrett's accusation at face value and giving him the benefit of the doubt, Smith questioned why it took Garrett a week to report the alleged slur to the NFL. He implied skepticism about the timing and validity of the claim, suggesting that if it really happened, Garrett would have spoken up immediately.
But damn it, we know our people. We know black people. And if somebody used that N-word on us,
you would know.
And I get ejected from the game because I try to knock his head off with a helmet, I don't need a week to tell the NFL office about that. A week? Excuse me.
Critics accused Smith of gaslighting a black athlete's experience with racism, essentially siding with the white quarterback's denial over the black player's accusation without sufficient evidence to make that judgment. The NFL ultimately found no such evidence of a slur being used, but many felt Smith's immediate skepticism was disrespectful to Garrett and dismissive of the very real racism that black players face in professional sports. Antonio Brown. The supremely talented but deeply troubled receiver went from being traded to Oakland to feuding bitterly over helmet rules that he felt were unfair, to getting fined repeatedly for missing practices and team activities, to threatening his general manager Mike Maye, to getting released by the Raiders, to signing with the New England Patriots, all in the span of just a few chaotic, bewildering weeks. And through it all, Stephen A. Smith was there to provide his characteristically fiery commentary. On September 9, 2019, Smith unleashed one of his most memorable and scathing rants on Get Up. He called Brown a disgrace, said he was incredibly selfish in ways that defied comprehension, and declared that Brown should be ashamed of himself for the way he conducted himself and the people he let down along the way.
That he's a disgrace, and there's no way to slice that. I can't excuse the kind of behavior that he has exhibited. It's absolutely positively embarrassing. He should be ashamed of himself. His family should be ashamed of him. His friends should be ashamed of him. And nobody should.
The reaction was immediate and divided. Brown blocked Smith on Instagram, while Smith laughed it off on air. But critics pointed to something they felt was a pattern. At the time, Brown was reportedly dealing with serious mental health struggles linked to head trauma, yet Smith showed zero empathy. Viewers noted that when white players face similar controversies, Smith often frames them as troubled or needing help. With Brown, he went straight for humiliation. To many fans, this exposed Stephen A. Smith's double standard and made this moment feel not just cruel, but racially charged. Moving ahead to the next entry on the list, Robert Griffin III. December 2012 brought a moment that exposed the ugly underbelly of how race is discussed and debated in sports media, and the dangerous territory commentators enter when they start policing identity. Co-panelist Rob Parker called Washington quarterback Robert Griffin III a cornball brother for having a white fiance, possible Republican political leanings, and generally not fitting stereotypical black expectations of how an African-American athlete should present himself to the world. Parker was eventually suspended and then fired for his offensive, reductive, and deeply inappropriate comments that sparked national outrage. But Stephen A. Smith's role in the discussion was far more complicated and nuanced than a simple condemnation of his colleagues' remarks. Initially, he defended RG3 eloquently and passionately saying, "You don't ever want to be defined by the color of your skin." However, as the conversation continued, he also implied that Griffin's carefully crafted public statements about not wanting to be defined by race were potentially designed strategically to appeal to white audiences and achieve mainstream acceptance rather than representing his authentic self and genuine beliefs. Critics quickly accused Smith of passive-aggressively questioning RG3's black identity, essentially gatekeeping what it means to be authentically black in America and policing the boundaries of racial identity in ways that were harmful and divisive. RG3 responded to the entire controversy with remarkable dignity and composure, saying he was proudly an African American who didn't have to be defined solely by his race or conform to anyone's narrow expectations of how he should think, speak, or live his life. The incident raised profound and uncomfortable questions about racial identity in professional sports that continue to resonate powerfully today. Up next, Josh Allen. Hours before the 2018 NFL Draft, Yahoo Sports unearthed offensive tweets from Josh Allen's high school years that threatened to derail his draft stock entirely. The tweets from 2012 and 2013 included racial slurs, homophobic language, and phrases like, "If it ain't white, it ain't right," in response to a friend asking why he was so white. Allen claimed the tweets referenced rap lyrics, movies, and TV shows like Modern Family and New Girl, and he had deleted them after they were unearthed. That very night, Allen called Stephen A. Smith directly quickly to apologize and explain himself, saying he was young and dumb at 14 and 15 years old, panicking about the situation, and insisting that the tweets didn't reflect his true character or values. The next morning on First Take, Smith revealed the late-night conversation in extensive detail.
Called me after 2 o'clock in the morning. He wanted to talk to me about it. He wanted to explain. He was tremendously contrite. He was apologetic. He recognized that it was irresponsible for him to do the things that he did. He attributed, obviously, largely to youth. Him and his friends were playing around, saying stuff like this. The quote that he got, he said one of them was from the show Modern Family. If it ain't white, it ain't right. Phil Dunphy.
While Stephen often harshly humiliates black athletes like Antonio Brown, Colin Kaepernick, and Myles Garrett, he urged forgiveness for Josh Allen and framed him as young and dumb, not malicious. Critics said this moment exposed a double standard, showing grace to a white prospect while regularly shaming black players in similar or even less severe situations. Commentators such as Joy Reid and Tiffany Cross have openly criticized Stephen A. Smith for what they describe as inconsistent and selective handling of race-related issues in media. They argue that Smith is often far more aggressive when criticizing black public figures, while showing greater restraint or nuance toward white figures involved in similar controversies. To critics, that same harshness shows up again and again in moments like these next two entries. Deshaun Watson. After Watson's abysmal Week 5 performance against the Washington Commanders, just 15 completions, a measly 125 yards, and absolutely no ability to move the offense in a humiliating blowout loss, Smith went completely scorched earth on First Take in a segment that quickly went viral and dominated sports conversation for days. He declared Watson's play was so awful that if somebody wanted to arrest him for being awful, I would accept it.
Deshaun Watson is awful. It's so awful that if somebody wanted to arrest him for being awful, I would accept it. It's that bad.
He compared Watson unfavorably to Jamarcus Russell, widely considered the biggest and most embarrassing bust in NFL draft history, a player whose name has become synonymous with wasted potential and organizational failure. Smith called Watson's $230 million fully guaranteed contract a complete and utter debacle that set the Cleveland Browns franchise back years, perhaps even an entire decade, in their quest to become competitive. Given Watson's extremely serious legal history, 22 sexual misconduct lawsuits, and an 11-game suspension handed down by the league in 2022 for violating the personal conduct policy, the arrest language struck many viewers as particularly tone-deaf, insensitive, and inappropriate given the gravity of the allegations Watson had faced. Browns fans called the segment too close to home, agreeing wholeheartedly that Watson had massively underperformed and failed to live up to his contract, but sharply criticizing Smith's extremity, his poor choice of words, and his apparent insensitivity to the serious nature of Watson's off-field issues. The rant went viral on TikTok and Twitter, with opinions split sharply on whether it was appropriately funny sports commentary or unnecessarily cruel mockery of a troubled player. Jamarr Chase. November 2025, brought a moment that transcended normal football violence and physicality and touched on deeper issues of respect, sportsmanship, and basic human decency between competitors. Video appeared to show Cincinnati receiver Jamarr Chase spitting directly at Pittsburgh defensive back Jalen Ramsey during a heated exchange after a play, an act considered one of the most disrespectful things one player can do to another. The incident led to Ramsey's immediate ejection from the game for retaliating with a punch that connected solidly with Chase's helmet. The NFL moved swiftly to address the situation, suspending Chase 1 game and fining him over $500,000 for his despicable actions on the field. On First Take, Stephen A. Smith went even further than the league's punishment, calling loudly and emphatically for a 2-game suspension, one for spitting, another for lying. After Chase initially and unconvincingly denied the incident occurred, despite clear and damning video evidence that showed exactly what happened. Chase eventually apologized publicly on Instagram after the suspension was upheld on appeal, saying with apparent sincerity, "What I did was wrong. The circumstances don't matter. My passion for the game is no excuse. There's zero place in our sport or in life for that level of disrespect." But critics felt Smith amplified the negativity unnecessarily and unfairly accused Chase of being a liar before all evidence was thoroughly reviewed, analyzed, and confirmed by league officials. A Steelers veteran even went so far in his criticism as to imply Chase should be tossed from NFL entirely for his disgusting and unsportsmanlike behavior, a punishment that seemed wildly excessive to most objective observers watching the controversy unfold. But there are also moments that some viewers felt reflected the same selective outrage, even when Stephen was discussing white players. Drake Maye. When the New England Patriots signed veteran receiver Stephon Diggs in March 2025, bringing the talented but sometimes controversial wideout to Foxborough in a move that surprised many around the league, Stephen A. Smith couldn't resist taking a pointed and unnecessary shot at their young and unproven quarterback. On first take, he questioned Diggs' decision-making and judgment, with a biting comparison that raised eyebrows throughout the NFL community and angered Patriots fans everywhere. He said, "You go from Josh Allen to C.J. Stroud to Drake Maye, you sure about that?" And added dismissively that no matter how talented a receiver might be, no matter how many routes he can run or catches he can make, it don't mean a damn thing if the QB can't get you the ball. The implication was crystal clear. Smith believed Maye wasn't capable of maximizing Diggs' talents and that the receiver had made a massive mistake in choosing New England. A few fans felt the take was unjustified and biased. Patriots fans across New England and throughout the country roasted Smith relentlessly online. Calling others grace became part of a bigger pattern they started noticing across his commentary. And sometimes, that selective outrage doesn't just show up in who he criticizes, but in how quickly he brings race into the conversation. Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun's release from the Eagles in March 2014 became a key piece of evidence in Stephen A. Smith's larger criticism of Chip Kelly and his personnel philosophy, serving as the foundation upon which he built his controversial argument about race and roster management in Philadelphia. When Smith brought up Kelly's controversial roster moves on First Take in 2015, Jackson's sudden and unexpected departure was Exhibit A in his argument that something deeply troubling and potentially racially motivated was happening behind closed doors in Philadelphia. Smith questioned openly and repeatedly why Jackson, who had recorded an impressive 1,332 yards in 2013, was abruptly let go, despite his obvious production, his value to the team, and his status as one of the most explosive playmakers in the entire National Football League. The implication was unmistakable and clearly intentional. Jackson's release, combined with McCoy's trade to Buffalo and Macklin's departure in free agency, formed a disturbing and undeniable pattern that made black players throughout the league deeply uncomfortable about what was happening in the city of brotherly love under Chip Kelly's leadership. The Eagles organization had cited reports of gang affiliations as a significant factor in Jackson's release, suggesting there were off-field concerns that made keeping him untenable. However, those reports were largely debunked as grossly exaggerated or completely fabricated by media outlets looking for sensational headlines. Jackson signed quickly with Washington and continued his productive NFL career without any incident whatsoever, proving the concerns were unfounded. But Smith's framing of the release as potentially racially motivated rather than purely merit-based drew sharp criticism from analysts and fans alike, who felt he was unnecessarily racializing straightforward business decisions and creating racial division where none actually existed, damaging reputations in the process. Leslie and McCoy. On March 9, 2015, Stephen A. Smith waded into a debate that touched on the uncomfortable intersection of race and roster management in professional sports. Head coach Chip Kelly had traded star running back LeSean McCoy to Buffalo, released explosive receiver Deshaun Jackson, and let talented wideout Jeremy McClin leave in free agency, all black players who had been cornerstones of the franchise. Meanwhile, Riley Cooper, a white receiver who had been caught on video using a racial slur at a concert, remained securely on the roster. Smith connected the dots on First Take in a segment that would be debated for years, saying Kelly's decisions leave a few brothers feeling uncomfortable and implying racial favoritism toward white players was at play in Philadelphia. He was careful to emphasize he wasn't directly calling Kelly a racist, but the implication hung heavy in the air like thick smoke that refused to dissipate. McCoy himself fueled the fire considerably in an ESPN The Magazine interview, saying Kelly got rid of all the black players, the good ones. Former Eagles offensive lineman Troy Thomas even claimed some players felt there was a hint of racism in the organization due to staff composition and decision-making patterns. Critics accused Smith of race baiting without evidence, injecting explosive racial narratives into personnel decisions that might have simply been strategic football moves gone wrong. Kelly denied any racism whatsoever, stating emphatically that his choices were purely football-based. The debate over whether Smith was courageously highlighting a real issue or irresponsibly manufacturing controversy for ratings continues to divide opinions. And there you have it, moments that capture the controversial, combustible, and often chaotic world of Stephen A. Smith in all its complicated glory. Love him or hate him, he remains one of the most powerful and influential voices in sports media today. If you enjoyed this video, click on the ones showing on your screen.